welcome to Maker Mondays here at TELUS World of Science Edmonton. I'm Jen, and we're here for another design, build, test challenge where we get to use stuff that we find in our homes to do an exciting engineering challenge. So this week, it's actually a two-part challenge. So the first part we're going to do this week, and we're going to be building a boat that can carry a load. So when you're done, we're going to ask you to post photos of your awesome boats in the comments down below. We have been shipwrecked on an island, and we have to find a way to escape. We will need to build a boat to get home, but the only materials we have are the wrecked parts of the ship that washed up and things we can already find on the island. The first step this week is to build a raft or a boat that will float with a load on board. All right, so now we need to gather the materials that we're going to need for this week's challenge. So first of all, you're going to need a milk carton, or you could even use a plastic bottle. Just make sure you rinse them out first. The other thing we're going to need are 2 pieces of aluminum foil that are 30 centimeters by 30 centimeters. And yes, we are limiting your supplies in this week's challenge, so please make sure that you measure out the quantities that you need. Okay. You also get to use a cloth this week. Make sure you ask a grown-up first to make sure that it's an old cloth that they don't mind you using. We might be ripping these up or cutting holes in them, so make sure it's an old one, but any size will work. We also have a sponge, 1 old sponge, if you want to grab one of those. We're also going to have 5 elastics, so 5 only is the number we're limited to. Also, if you have some corks at home, some old corks, we're going to limit you to 4 of those. Okay. If you don't have corks at home, you could also use a small airtight container, like maybe an old pill bottle or an old candy container. Just has to be airtight. Okay. We're also going to be using duct tape this week, but again, we are going to limit how much you use. So you can use 10 centimeters of duct tape. Okay, we are also going to let you use a piece of string or maybe a thin piece of rope, but again, we're going to limit how much you use, so only 50 centimeters, 50 centimeters. Okay, so the other material we have here is some old grocery bags. Okay, we can use those as one of our materials. And then that's going to cover the materials from our shipwreck, but there's probably going to be some materials already on the island. So think of things like some old leaves, maybe you have some outside that you can use for this challenge, some old twigs and sticks or branches. I even found some bark here that could be really useful as well. Okay, so that's just for building. But we're also going to need to test our design, and in order to test it, we're going to need something with a bit of weight. So you could use anything you have at home that's a bit of weight, but we're going to be using marbles today to test out our boats. The other thing you're going to need is an actual place with water where you can test out your boat. So you could use a big bucket or a kiddie pool. Just make sure that you set it up somewhere where it's convenient to set up a big basin or a big pool. So I definitely recommend, if the weather's great, go outside and do this activity. If you have to do it indoors, then you probably want to put down a tarp or maybe a couple towels, just in case there's a bit of water splashing out. A boat can float when it is less dense than water. This can be accomplished in many ways. It can be built of a material that is less dense than water. For example, most types of wood are like this. Or it can be built in a shape that holds a lot of air. Most boats are shaped like a cup and filled with air, which lowers the density of the boat. If you replace all the airspace with something more dense than water, the boat will sink. Both material and shape are important when designing a boat. Before we begin building, we have to actually choose which of these materials that we found on our island that we want to use in our design. So, I think I'm going to use the milk carton and the duct tape for my first design. So we have chosen our materials. Now we need to make a few designs. All right, so I've drawn out a few different designs, but I think I know which one I want to start with. So let's test out this one first. Now we get to build our first boat. Great. Now we're ready to test out our first boat. Okay, it's time to test out our first design. So we're going to take our first boat, put it in the pool. So far, so good. It's floating on its own. That's a great bonus. Okay, we're going to start adding marbles now. So remember, we want to count these as we're putting them in. So 1, 2, so far, so good. 3, yeah, we're at 115 marbles. Sank our first design. All right, that went really well. Let's try out another design. This one's completely different, but it looks really cool. All right, so our second design is totally different, so I'm curious to see how this one goes. We used a sponge, and sponges float pretty well most of the time, and we have a little bag here to hold our marbles in. So here we go. Okay, so it's floating without any marbles. All right, so we've only put 4 marbles in the bottom, and already the marbles are touching the bottom of the kiddie pool. So clearly the design doesn't work because the sponge was still floating, but our marbles, were all at the bottom of the ocean. So they're probably not going to get air very well that way. So let's test out a new design. We are going to try a third design today, and this is what we're going to do next. Okay, so this time we're going to test out our tinfoil boat. So we're gonna, okay, so far so good. It's floating on its own. All right, we're gonna start adding our marbles again. So our third design sank with 51 marbles. Oh, raise it from the bottom of the ocean. Okay, so it's time to try out our last design. So I noticed that our first design had a larger surface area, and it seemed to do really well. It held over 100 marbles. But This most recent design, it had a lot of give as we were adding extra marbles to it, so it actually sank a little deeper. So our last design is an improvement on both designs. So we've made it a larger surface area, so it covers more of the water surface. And we've also added some tape on the corners to help prevent that water from seeping in where we've folded it. All right, let's see how it does. $235 marbles, and so I'm out of marbles now that are the same size, and our boat is still floating. So this is the best design so far. But I don't know about you, I really want to sink it. So let's keep adding some weight to it. I have some more marbles and some rocks, so let's see if we can sink this. Whoa! We did it! We sank our ship! Now that we've tested out all of our designs and seen which design is the best for holding the most weight or the biggest load, it's time to see what you guys came up with. So if you'd like to share your photos and videos of your boat or raft designs, you can leave them in the comments below, and hopefully we can post them in our Maker Monday segment next week. So thank you for joining us again for Maker Monday here at TELUS World of Science Edmonton. Hopefully you can join us next week for part 2 of our boat design challenge. And remember to always stay curious.